Tonight, more weapons and an ultimatum, how Donald Trump thinks he can change the course of the war in Ukraine. But instead of supplying weapons to Kyiv, the US will sell them to Europe, likely at a profit.
I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt that we had a deal about 4 times. And here we are, still talking about it.
Frustration with Russia as their drone attacks increase tenfold. But will the threat of secondary tariffs be a strong enough deterrent? Donald Trump wants an unconditional ceasefire. Russia argues it will give Kyiv a chance to rearm. So will Putin be forced back to the negotiating table? Also coming up.
This is like Vietnam. You know, we're taking losses, but in the end, we're going to win. It's a war.
We go on patrol with volunteers warning LA residents about immigration raids as business owners say they could be forced to close. Mass deportations in Iran too. More than 500,000 Afghans have been told to leave, many accused of spying for Israel. And a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet on his escape from Gaza and why he's documenting the fate of his friends and neighbours. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening and welcome to the programme. Donald Trump touted it as a big announcement, and in the end, it was. A major deal between the United States and the NATO defence alliance to supply military hardware to Ukraine. But there is a big difference. Joe Biden allocated more than $180 billion to support Kyiv's war effort. Donald Trump's approach is, well, very Donald Trump.
We, the United States, will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it, and they're going to be paying for it.
He knows the Ukrainian president is desperate to stop overnight attacks like this one. So he's made a deal. Washington will supply weapons, both defensive and offensive. Europe will pay, and hopefully Ukraine will benefit.
We get a lot of thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
But I am very disappointed with President Putin, and I thought he was somebody that meant what he said.
We actually thought we had probably 4 times the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you were called and you said, this looks good.
Yeah.
And then the deal wouldn't happen because bombs would be thrown out that night.
The US president isn't hiding his frustration with his Russian counterpart. He's given him 50 days to agree to a ceasefire deal and threatened secondary sanctions on Moscow's trade partners. So yes, this is a big shift. European leaders will be relieved that Washington isn't completely stepping back. Ukrainians will know there are weapons on the way. But does it actually move the dial on the battlefield? Will the US president enforce his own deadline, or will he be outwitted again? We'll discuss all of that tonight. Let's just get started with this report from our US correspondent, James Matthews.
So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job.
Ukraine hasn't always sat comfortably in the Oval Office. Between a president and NATO Secretary General, it found significant support.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple.
This was a US president coming round to the Ukrainian cause as the country endures intense Russian attacks. Trump announced 100% US tariffs on countries doing business with Russia if there's no peace deal in 50 days.
You don't have the cards.
Have you said thank you?
You're gambling with World War III.
The shouting match with Ukraine's president seemed a long time ago. Today's West Wing brought news of a deal on weapons sold by America to European countries for onward distribution to Ukraine. Political support in this White House comes at a cost.
We are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them.
No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you do want Europeans to pay for it.
If the move reflects a warming towards Kyiv, there is a chill with Moscow. Trump had acknowledged he's been played by Putin.
We're going to do something a little different for this country.
At a White House lunch with members of its faith office, he fleshed out the detail.
Numerous times, I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home. I said, what?
It prompted an awkward laugh
So,
for uncomfortable territory.
we don't like that.
Always, sir. How are you, sir? It's good to see you.
Ukraine's president was meeting America's special envoy Keith Kellogg and offered special thanks.
We are thankful to President Trump for his all messages and very strong decisions.
There will still be questions around a US president politically invested in building a relationship with Vladimir Putin. Not least among them surround the newly announced secondary sanctions. They'll be imposed if there's no peace deal in 50 days. Earlier this month on the phone, Putin told Trump that over the next 60 days, he plans an escalation in the conflict. It is a breathing space for the Russian leader that won't make them breathe any easier in Ukraine.
Let us pray.
Trump is stepping into this conflict in a way Ukrainians haven't seen before. In this president, they trust in hope and prayer. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Lord, we do.
Well, just how significant a shift is this from the US president? Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, can take us through the details of today's announcement.
This wasn't quite the massive shift that had been hyped, but it is a big change all the same. Donald Trump is doing a number of things. He's committing to supply weapons to Ukraine, but only by selling them to European nations first. He is giving Putin an ultimatum, agree to a deal within 50 days, and he's threatening 100% secondary tariffs on Russia if the Russian leader fails to comply. The novel arrangement will see America selling billions of dollars worth of advanced weapons, potentially to European countries, who will then supply them on to Ukraine, instead of America sending them directly to Ukraine, as it has so far in this war. Countries like Germany, Finland, the UK, Denmark would be among the NATO buyers supplying Ukraine. What weapons is not clear beyond Patriot missile air defence batteries. Ukraine desperately needs better protection from Russian air attacks. They've ramped up massively recently, up by 50% in the last month alone. As these figures show here, almost 500 drones fired on the 9th of June, then peaking to more than 740 on one night last week. Compare that to a year ago when Ukraine was coping with 200 or 300 drones a night on average. The number of drones and missiles launched by Russian forces in June this year was 10 times the amount launched in June 2024, and it is exacting a punishing toll in terms of casualties. Last month saw the highest number of civilian casualties in any month since the war began from air attacks. More than 230 killed and more than 1,300 injured. What Trump has announced today will make a difference and be welcomed in Kyiv, but experts say there is a limit to what Patriot defence systems can do against swarms of cheap drones fired into Ukraine en masse.
Patriot is a system that is designed for high-speed cruise missiles and incoming ballistic missiles. So it's not really the most effective, or rather, it's not really most efficient use of a $3 million interceptor against drones that are being launched that might only cost a few $1,000s each. Also, the numbers that they're being launched in, hundreds a night, would rapidly use up Ukraine's supply of Patriot missiles.
So a shift, it seems, in the president's mindset, but a lot will depend on the details and whether this 50-day deadline for Russia is one the president is prepared to enforce with meaningful action, unlike some of his others.
That was Dominic Waghorn there. Well, let's get some reaction now from Alexander Mereshko, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament. Mr. Mereshko, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. I just want to first of all get your reaction to the almost tonal U-turn that we're hearing from Donald Trump.
Well, honestly speaking, today's news from the White House, from the Oval Office, have exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect something like that happening, and I lost any hope. But luckily, I was wrong. And what we have is a tremendously important shift in the stance of the President of the United States with regard to Ukraine. And we have at least three most important news. First of all, this is about providing Ukraine with not only defensive weaponry like Patriot systems, which help to defend our cities and our civilian population. We are also talking about offensive weaponry like long-range missiles, which help us to defeat Russia on the battlefield. Also, there is some prospects with regard to secondary sanctions finally. And the final important news is that today there was a direct phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky, and they have agreed to communicate more often to make it systematic. So we have tremendously important, great news. But at the same time, there is, of course, some fly in the ointment, so to speak. By that, I mean these 50 days, because Putin, he might take this as a kind of encouragement even, you know, to double down on bombing and shelling Ukrainian cities. This is what I'm afraid of. But hopefully, when the United States will provide military assistance on time, it will help us to minimize these risks.
And I guess that is the big question mark, the United States delivering things on time, because we have seen infighting in the United States in the past, which has impacted the shipment and delivery of weapons, which has then had a direct impact on the battlefield. You know, the last 3 years, we've seen the United States flip and flop at different twists and turns. And now we've seen the US president almost make a 180-degree turn here. Russian bloggers are saying that we might see Donald Trump flip again. Is there cautious optimism or concern that that may happen in Ukraine?
Yes, of course, taking into consideration the previous experience and some inconsistency in the stance of the American president, we have to be careful. We have to be cautiously optimistic. But at the same time, I would like to express our gratitude to Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO. He's unbelievable, extremely skillful diplomat, and he proved it again. And also, I'm grateful to the First Lady she seems like she understands what's going on, and to me, she sounded as supportive of Ukraine.
Do you think President Zelensky has been vindicated here, given what he said to President Trump at the end of February? You know, don't trust Vladimir Putin. He is not, you know, when he says he wants peace, he's not telling you the truth. And now we're seeing 5 or 6 months later, the president almost agreeing.
Well, for us, it has always been obvious all along that we knew from the very beginning that Putin, he cannot be trusted, and it's absolutely unrealistic to expect any deal with Putin because he proved it many times. But seems like for President Trump, it was not obvious from the very beginning, but on the basis of his own experience, he finally came to the same conclusion. And it's also important, it proves that our president was right in this dispute, so to speak, in the Oval Office.
Mr. Mereshko, you put Donald Trump's name in a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. You then submitted a document to reverse that because you felt, as you said, like nothing was moving. Do you regret that now?
Well, I'm lucky in this regard. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm really happy to be wrong. But at that moment, when I took decision to withdraw the nomination, I was guided by the fact that, unfortunately, at that moment, at that particular moment, President Trump, he didn't deliver on his promise to impose sanctions on Russia after he put this deadline himself, 2 weeks. And unfortunately, he didn't follow through at that moment. But I'm happy to be wrong.
Mr. Mereshko, we're grateful for your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, let's go straight to Washington now and speak to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. Mark, interesting, isn't it? You know, you and I spoke at the end of February on air about that blow-up between Donald Trump and President Zelensky. And here we are 5 months later, where we see Donald Trump making a slight U-turn, but there's still, as we heard there from my guest, cautious optimism in Ukraine because nothing is certain with this president.
Nothing is certain. So true, so true. But I think this is a remarkable day. We got a hint of it on Friday. He did an interview with NBC where he suggested that he might come up with this plan. And then we got some of the detail. We still don't have all the detail. We don't know precisely what weapons will be provided. Are they going to be more defensive weapons, or are they going to be offensive weapons to allow Ukraine to take the fight to Russia, which would be a complete game changer. But what is so clear is that in tone and in policy, Donald Trump has shifted completely on Ukraine, and he's certainly shifted in tone with Russia. We'll see whether the policy shift comes with Russia as well. But in a sense, he has come to the place where he's come to the place where European leaders have been all along. It's just taken him a little while to get there. Now, if you were to put a sort of positive spin on this, you could see this as Donald Trump doing what he could, naively maybe, to try and find a form of peace. And he has been unable to, because, to use his words, Vladimir Putin has been tapping him along. But for me, whatever European capital you're sitting in, or indeed in Kyiv, this is a very important and it is a good day. Your previous guest mentioned two things. First of all, the abilities, the diplomatic abilities of Mark Rutte. I think they can't be underestimated. I mean, everyone was cringing, laughing, joking at the fact he called Donald Trump daddy not all that long ago at the NATO summit. But maybe that was just, maybe it was in the heat of the moment. Whatever it was smart. It worked. It is that sort of thing, working out not how to play Donald Trump, but how to get him on side. It takes time sometimes. The other really interesting thing appears to be the view of the First Lady, Melania Trump, someone we do not see much of, or haven't in this presidency. But clearly she has a view on all this, because not once but twice Donald Trump chose to tell us that he, when he goes back to the residence in the White House, has said to Melania on a couple of occasions, I had a really good chat with Putin today, and her response was, oh yeah, well, look at the television. He's been bombing Ukraine again. So I think that's just a little fascinating insight into Donald Trump's shifting mindset. But the other thing that I think is really interesting is that, in a sense, Yalda, Donald Trump now finds himself in a bind, in a predicament, because his predecessor, Joe Biden, he did what he could to allow Ukraine to keep fighting this war. If Donald Trump wants to get to a position where all of this stops, it may be the case that he actually has to give Ukraine what it needs to win the war. And to do that would be to escalate the war. And of course, what Donald Trump wants to do is stop the war, stop the killing. And behind him, he has got his own base and those within his own coalition, politicians within his cabinet who are America first, who are isolationist, who do not want that. So that is the predicament he's in. But it's clear from the latest tweet from Zelensky, as you can imagine, Yalda, he is very, very pleased. He's just tweeted now, I spoke to POTUS. It was a very good conversation. Thank you for the willingness to support Ukraine and to continue working together to stop the killing and to establish a lasting and just peace. 5 months is a very long time in Trump world, Yalda, but it represents a seismic shift today, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And another conflict and war, that Donald Trump has spoken about bringing to an end is obviously the situation in Gaza. And we've been trying to track the ceasefire negotiations. You've got some updates on that, Mark.
Yeah, I spent the morning talking to sources very close to the negotiations, which are ongoing in Doha. There is no sense that they have broken down. They are still talking. They're still negotiating. And the update that we've got is that, as I understand it, the Israelis have now put forward a third proposal on the one sticking block, which is the extent to which the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are deployed in Gaza during the ceasefire. And it appears to be a further concession by the Israelis to try and to bridge the divide. They are now saying that along the Philadelphia corridor, which is a strip of land at the southern end of the Gaza Strip, they are now proposing that the IDF will actually only be deployed into a 2-kilometer buffer zone within the Philadelphia corridor along Rafah, right at the bottom part of that map there. That represents a concession because the previous maps were talking about the IDF being in a 5-kilometer area. So So this represents a move for sure towards trying to bridge that last remaining blockage in terms of getting a deal. So I still don't have any sense of when they might come to an agreement, in a sense that the ball is back in Hamas's court. How many times have we said that? But there is movement. But I think politics is wrapped up in it all as well. Netanyahu, he knows that if he is to go for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, then the extremists within his own coalition will collapse the government. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But Donald Trump is determined to try and bring this war to an end.
Mark, thank you as always for that update. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. The IDF admits an error was made after strikes killed 10 people, including 6 children, collecting water in Gaza. And we meet the activists leading the fight against Donald Trump's sweeping immigration raids across the United States.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Welcome back. It's fast becoming one of Donald Trump's most controversial policies of his administration, the crackdown on illegal immigrants living and working in the United States. Videos of the so-called ICE raids, when enforcement officers lift people from the streets to be sent to detention centres, are all over social media. Now groups of activists are leading a fight back. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner joined some of them in California and sent us this report.
It's 5:30 a.m. in the car park of a laundrette in south central LA.
This is like Vietnam. You know, we're taking losses, but in the end, we're going to win. It's a war.
This is what the resistance movement against Donald Trump's deportation policies looks like. This group of organised volunteers is about to set off on patrol. They'll be looking for any sign of immigration enforcement. Under pressure from the White House, immigration agents known as ICE are intensifying deportation efforts in LA. They're targeting car washes, DIY shop car parks and farms. Anywhere that people living here without proper documents are known to work. Some have been here for decades, but they're arrested and taken to detention centres. Videos like these have prompted outrage and now the fight back. Armed with walkie-talkies, they set off to warn their neighbours.
Right now, the tension is like people hate these agents because they're terrorizing our community and our people. But they really are operating 24 hours a day at this point.
People are on edge, right, at the moment?
Yeah, big time.
Ron and another volunteer scan the streets in this heavily Latino area. They're looking for vehicles like the ones immigration agents often use.
A few vehicles look suspicious, but nothing of note. Just checking in.
This man to your right here, he's the exact target that they're looking for. That's what they're doing now. The low-hanging fruit, the easy victim.
Yeah.
And so that is proving to be more successful for their quotas.
It turns out to be a quiet morning, no sign of any brewing immigration operations, but the vigilance is understandable. Maria knows the cost of being caught unaware.
It's, sorry, it's kind of hard without him. I just, feel alone when you get used to somebody and he's not there no more.
Is this the longest you've ever been apart from him?
Yes, we've never been apart.
Last month, her husband Javier was working at a car wash. This video shows him being handcuffed and forced into a vehicle by ICE agents. He's now being held in a detention centre 2 hours away.
I know they're doing their job, but it's like, they don't have to do it like that, getting them and, forcing people and, and pushing them down on the ground. And they're not animals.
Javier has lived in the US nearly 40 years and paid taxes for most of that time, says Maria. The couple have 3 grown-up American children and 2 grandchildren. But Javier's work permit expired 2 years ago, meaning he was living here illegally.
I don't know what to say to my grandkids because the oldest one, he calls them papas. When is papa's coming home? And it's like, I don't know what to say. He's not a criminal. He doesn't have any bad background. All he did was just work.
Some question whether these people doing physical and menial jobs are really the ones American voters wanted thrown out. Soledad owns a Mexican restaurant in Hollywood. She watches in horror as yet another raid unfolds at a nearby farm.
Must be scary watching this in your city.
Sí me da miedo.
I'm very scared, she says. All of her employees are undocumented, some too nervous to come to work. The process to get papers, she says, is too long and too expensive.
Tengo que quitar horas. I
have to work double shifts to be able to make up for the hours, and yes, I am very desperate and sometimes I cry. We have no sales and no money to pay their wages.
The restaurants and the streets are much quieter here than before. People chilled by the raids. The White House says they're protecting the country from dangerous criminals. ICE agents have been shot at while carrying out operations. The tension here is ratcheting up. Deportation numbers are rising too. But the order from Donald Trump is to arrest even more people living here illegally. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, we'll speak to the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet on his escape from Gaza and why he's documenting the fate of his friends and neighbours.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. Let's go to Gaza now, where local emergency workers say 6 children were amongst those killed in an Israeli missile strike as they queued for water. Well, following the airstrike yesterday, emergency rooms in the Al-Auda hospital were overrun with those injured, bodies of those killed laid on the floor in the corridors. Israel has since claimed a technical error caused the strike to miss its intended Islamic Jihad militant target. Well, a few hours after that attack, and another strike hit the busy Samar Junction market in Gaza City, killing several. Gaza's health ministry says over 58,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war in Gaza began. Well, for Palestinians looking at the violence from afar, all they can do is tell the stories of those who died so the world can remember how they lived.
What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike. Turn off the lights in every room. Sit in the inner hallway of the house, away from the windows. Stay away from the stove. Stop thinking about making black tea. Have a bottle of water nearby big enough to cool down children's fear. Get a child's kindergarten backpack and stuff, tiny toys and whatever amount of money there is, and the ID cards and photos of late grandparents, aunts or uncles, and the grandparents' wedding invitation that's been kept for a long time. And if you're a farmer, you should put some strawberry seeds in one pocket and some soil from the balcony flower pot in the other, and hold on tight to whatever number there was on the cake from the last birthday.
Well, that was a poem by Palestinian writer Mossab Abu Toha, published as part of his new collection, Forest of Noise. He recently won the Pulitzer Prize for his essays published in the New Yorker magazine. And he joins me now. Thank you so much, Mossab, for joining us here on the programme. You actually wrote that poem originally in 2021. How would you write that poem today? Because it's a very different Gaza.
Thank you so much, Yalda, for having me. I appreciate this. That was a different time. That was a different location. When I wrote that poem, I was a father of 3 children. We were sheltering in our house when Israel was attacking Gaza in 2021. And I remember that one of my children was so scared of the bombs that another child of mine threw a blanket on her, telling her, "You can hide now from the bombs." But in October 2023, our house was bombed in one airstrike. On October 28th, the 4-story house where we used to live it turned into a heap of rubble, and we were lucky enough to be away from the house in a refugee camp. Otherwise, 30 members of my family would have been killed in that airstrike. In a similar airstrike, I lost 31 members of my family, including a first cousin, along with her disabled husband and their 5 children. So if I were to write this poem today, I would write about what a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike in their tent. But in the tent, or even in the house, whatever it is right now, there are no rooms, there are no kitchens, there is no stove, there is no water, there is no tea, there are no children, there is nothing anymore. It's unlike any other Israeli attacks on the population in Gaza. Yalda, today I was going to talk to you about a family, a survivor from one family, 117 members of whom were killed in one airstrike on December 6th, 2023. And I found out that not a single mainstream media, Western mainstream media, reported on that airstrike. I tried to make a tree out of that family. This is the first draft. You can see here. So a grandfather, so this is the grandfather, Ata Saleh Juha. These are his 5 children. These are the children of these children, and some were killed with their wives and their grandchildren and the grandchildren. So this is only one family. This is the rest of the family here.
Yeah, in Mossab, we can see that you've been trying to document the killing of these families and the entire generations killed as a result of the Israeli strikes and bombardment of Gaza in the last 20 months or so. You also have recently lost a friend of yours trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Indeed. Yeah, Mu'tasim Hamouda, his name. I mean, he was one of my friends and one of the people who I know who were killed. And the tragic thing about Mu'tasim, you can see his photo here, is that I'm used to posting photos of people whose names and identities are not known, because these people come from different places in Gaza, and their corpses are brought to the hospital, and the medical staff do not know their names, so they post their photos on social media groups so that their families would recognize them. So I posted the photo of Mu'tasim on my Facebook and my Instagram, and then the next morning I found that he was one of the people who were killed. And I looked at some of the photos, and it was one of the photos was of Mu'tasim. So you can see his photo here, a beautiful man, a father of 3 children and a husband. And if you look at his photo, I'm not sure if you're gonna show it to your viewers. I mean, I couldn't recognize my neighbor. I couldn't recognize Mu'tasim from that photo.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you talk there about the families who have been killed. Your friend here at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation trying to get food. Do you think, I mean, and you talked about being one of the lucky ones, being able to escape with your children, even though you were detained at a checkpoint, you managed to get out and get to the United States. Do you ever think that you will return to Gaza? Do you think that it will ever be the Gaza that you knew?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, 2 things. I was not detained. I was abducted from a checkpoint when I was told by the American embassy in Jerusalem that I was cleared to leave Gaza with my wife and kids. But a few days later, when I was going through a checkpoint on the Salah ad-Din Street, I was abducted by the Israeli soldiers under gunpoint. I was forced to remove all my clothes in front of 3 soldiers. I was then blindfolded and handcuffed, and I was kept hostage for 3 days. Other people who were abducted the same day with me spent literally months, and some of them were killed under torture, like Dr. Adnan al-Bursh. See, the other thing is, I mean, it's true that Gaza still exists, but it is not the same Gaza that I know. I mean, I told you that our house was bombed on October 28th. But the fact right now is that the whole neighborhood, the streets, the mosques, the hospitals, the schools, everything is gone. So, I mean, the land remains, but the people on it, the houses on it, the neighborhoods on it, it's no longer there. So, Yalda, I was going to tell you that I wanted to talk about the Juha family, the 117 people who were killed. But just before I got onto this call with you, I'm not sure if you can see that. I posted just now a video that I saw of a family, Arafat family in Tufah neighborhood. And I hope that your viewers, some of whom are people in power, can see that this house was bombed today from Arafat family. And this is a video by one of the survivors. Sorry. Yeah. He's asking someone under the rubble to move her hand. Here. حركي, move your hand. I'm taking a video to share it with others. You hear the gunshots here. So, I mean, I can't believe that this is happening, that not only are we writing poems, essays, not only are we talking on TV, but we are showing videos. I mean, this video is from now. I'm talking to you, and I got the video, and I'm showing to you here. It's not like we are told about a genocide that's happening miles and miles, and we don't have access there. But in fact, we are showing the whole world. We are telling them not stories only, but we are showing videos. So, I mean, this woman who is under the rubble now is a mother of someone, and from this video, we know that 20 people are under the rubble of that house. And another thing, the Juha family who I talked to today, the survivor, he told me that from out of the 117 people, only 50 were buried. The rest are under the rubble, including the survivor's wife and 2 children. Yeah. So we are talking about Gaza, the city under whose houses people remain under the rubble, and no one is able to help them. And we are showing videos and telling everyone, you heard the gunshots, and you see the hand of the woman, the mother, under the rubble. She is alive right now. We're talking about her. She's alive. And I took this chance to show her video in the hope that someone with a heart would have to say something or do something to save her life, if possible.
Mosab, we're grateful that you've joined us here on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you may remember the controversy surrounding a BBC documentary on Gaza after they failed to disclose it was narrated by the son of a Hamas official. Well, today a review has found that it was, in fact, a breach of their editorial guidelines. The corporation pulled Gaza How to Survive a War Zone from iPlayer back in February. The review determined that Hoyo Films, the independent production company, is primarily responsible for the failure, but the BBC also shares some responsibility. That led to this apology from the CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turnes.
I'm sorry this happened. It was a mistake.
Let's just be clear. No one in the BBC knew that the father of this narrator was a Hamas official.
Nope, exactly. That's what the report finds.
Should they have known?
Yes, they should have known, because their questions should have been answered at the many times of asking by the independent production company.
And when they weren't answered, they should have been pursued.
Yes.
That was Deborah Turness, the CEO of BBC News. Well, the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, described the events as a catastrophic failure. Have a listen.
Look, it's not for the government to say who should and shouldn't work at the BBC. My job is to make sure that we uphold the highest standards and that the public and Parliament can have confidence in the BBC. I think, given the recent events, that has been called into question, but the BBC in recent weeks has made big strides to try to reset that relationship with the public and show that they have grip on the very, very serious issues.
Let's focus on something a little different now, on the impact of the war on the global economy. Since the October 7th attacks, despite an initial hit to the markets and subsequent conflicts in the region, Israel's economy is still booming. Let's get more with Ruchir Sharma, who initially reported the story in the Financial Times. He's also author of What Went Wrong with Capitalism. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma, for joining us here on the programme. You know, the issue of Israel's economy and how it's been impacted or not is not often discussed, but you have been tracking it, documenting it, and you've written some pieces in the FT. You write that Israel is cementing itself as the regional economic superpower. Just summarise the way that the markets have reacted to Israel's economy after the October 7 attacks to date.
Well, first to start with, that if you look at it since October 2023, in dollar terms, the best performing major stock market in the world has been that of Israel. It's up around 80%. So that's quite a stunning rally that it has experienced. Even when we were going through the intense conflicts, such as the 12-day war with Iran, the Israeli market kept rising. And as a watcher of markets for a long period of time, that caught my attention, that the message from the market was that despite fears that this conflict could escalate, and some people were saying that this could be the start of the Third World War or something very dire, the markets in Israel were really signaling that this conflict is going to end pretty quickly, and Israel is going to emerge from this, at least militarily and even economically, on top of this conflict. So that's the message that we were getting from the stock market. And the second point that I would say is that which I've done in the article that you referred to this morning in the FT, is to show that just how well the Israeli economy has been doing for the last few decades. That wasn't always the case when the Israeli economy was founded after the Second World War. It was a very socialist kind of economy. It ran into crises for spending too much in the 1980s, but it has really cemented its place as a dominant regional force because of the kind of investment it's done in technology. No other country in the world spends as much on research and development as a share of its economy as Israel does, of over 6%. That's twice the global average. And I think that technical prowess was something on display even on the battlefield over the past few months.
Well, which is fascinating, Ruchir, because markets don't necessarily respond well to uncertainty. And so you're saying, despite that, there was a feeling that, you know, Israel would emerge from these conflicts, whether it was a situation with Hezbollah or even the 12-day war with Iran and the ongoing conflict in Gaza, that it still managed to kind of overcome that. And you're also saying that, I guess, because Israel's economy has diversified so much, it's able to continue to grow.
Yes, that's right. So in fact, the economy is now set to grow at about 4%. For a developed economy, that's a pretty significant growth rate. Israel's per capita income is now over $50,000. The economy is among the 30 largest in the world. And in fact, as I document in the article, which is that there are about 200 economies in the world, and only 40 of those are classified as developed economies, meaning economies with a pretty good standard of living and a relatively high per capita income. And Israel is one of the very few economies that used to be called developing and now has become a developed economies. So this is a lot of economic progress that Israel has made, and it's led by technology. And the main point that I make here, both in the article and also in the book that you referred to, is that if you look at the success of nations, nations tend to be much more successful economically when they invest in technology rather than relying on oil. Because if you look at most oil-producing countries, commodity-producing countries, over the last 40 to 50 years, they've hardly made any economic progress, at least relative to the leading economy in the world, which is the United States. On the other hand, economies that invest a lot in technology and research and development, and Israel being a case in point, have done very well economically. So that's the contrasting model that we get to see even in the Middle East. And it's because of that that Israel has dominated the region now and emerged really as the richest economy in the region of any size.
I have about a minute left, Ruchir, but I wanted to know, how does it fare compared to, say, the Gulf states, which are also trying to move away from, you mentioned their oil and gas and investing in those things, trying to build their economies on things like technology. How is it comparing to those?
So Israel's done far better than those economies because its productivity levels, if you look at the way it's measured, is much higher than any of the other Gulf states. Now, I think the Gulf states are realizing that. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, as you mentioned, these economies now are looking to diversify and are making a big push towards whether it's AI or technology, and also moving away from their reliance on oil. So I think there's a broad recognition that relying on oil to grow is the wrong growth model, and instead relying on technology to grow. And what Israel has done is truly exceptional. But in general, to invest more in technology and research and development is the only path to long-term prosperity. So I think that's what's come through in this contrast that we have seen. And also militarily, any war is unfortunate. But if you just look at it in terms of domination, the Israeli defense technology is something which really came into prominence, and how technologically superior that is over the last few months.
Ruchir, really fascinating hearing your analysis there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Yalda.
We focused earlier in the programme on immigration raids in the United States. I just wanted to focus now on the mass movement of people on the border with Iran. The UN's Migration Agency says last month saw over 256,000 Afghans return from Iran via the Islam Kala border, averaging up to 20,000 per day. Well, these pictures show thousands of Afghan refugees on the Islam Kala border crossing with Iran. Back in March, Tehran said it was expelling all undocumented Afghans, some of whom the government accused of spying for Israel. Let's get more on the story. At the border, there's not enough aid to go around, with the UN's Migration Agency saying the record movement is pushing border resources to the brink and aid is reaching only 10% of those in need. Well, we can speak now to Mewand Rouhani, Chief Executive of the International Network for Aid, Relief and Assistance. Mr. Rouhani, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. We're just talking there about the situation with the Afghans being expelled, and in the last few weeks we've seen a real escalation of those being expelled. Just talk to us about the situation on the border.
Thank you very much. The situation is horrible on the Islam Kala border. I just returned from Herat yesterday. Families were deported with just one pair of clothes. They were not allowed to take their belongings from their homes. They were kicked out of their homes. And you could see the signs of torture in most of the people's faces. One man died the other day, and when the Ministry of Health examined, they found there were signs of torture. When you talk to the families, they cry and they cannot explain their situation on how they were removed from their houses, how they were dragged out of their homes, and they were thrown on the streets, and then they were moved to a bus station, and then they were stuffed like animals in those buses, and then they were sent to the Islam Kala border. Have
the Iranians used the 12-day war with Israel as a way to fast track this. And, in many instances, we've heard them accuse some of these Afghans of spying for Israel.
They have not substantiated that, so I don't know whether that's true or not. But of course, all those people were poor people. They were workers, and they were selling stuff on the streets, and they just went. They escaped from the Taliban to Iran, and they've been spending like 3 or 4 years in Iran. How could they be spying in less than 3 years? So, and they were also talking about the documented and undocumented Afghans, but I talked to a few people, they had documents and they were removed from Iran with those documents. So it wasn't about the documented and undocumented. Those people I talked to, they included both documented and undocumented Afghans.
Mr. Rouhani, I have about a minute left, but if you could just tell us about what they're coming back to. Do they have anything that they're coming back to at the moment?
They have nothing. They have nothing. They didn't have a penny to pay for the bus tickets. The bus ticket costs like $25 from Herat to Kabul. Some of these people are living in the north of Afghanistan, so they will end up in Kabul, and then from here they will go to Kapisa, Parwan, Samangan, Jozjan, Badakhshan, in these provinces, and they had nothing to go with. And this evening, I visited the camp in Kabul, where when they come from Herat, they end up in Kabul, and they were living in an abandoned industrial zone, which is highly vulnerable to a number of diseases because that area was used by drug addicts in the past.
Yeah, a devastating situation for so many desperate Afghans being forced out of Iran, and this situation has been escalated in the last few weeks. Mr. Rouhani, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Well, that's it for this edition of The World. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. The news at 10 is next with Anna.